All right, we're back with the math part of making your menu. So, the oversimplified answer, take your cost of the item and multiply it by 300. Now,
That's it.
does this
pretty much
mean that restaurants are making 300% profits? Oh, absolutely not.
No.
The only way restaurants make money is by selling you what's on their menu, which seems dumb to say, but maybe what people don't realize is that price does have to cover every cost in the place. So
Yeah.
a bunch of years ago, I was visiting my beloved grandmother in her central Wisconsin farming town of Princeton, population 1,400. Go Tigers. We drove to the next town over, Green Lake, which is a little smaller but more touristy, so it has a few more restaurants. And it was a Wednesday, so she got the pork chop special. And at one point, we're talking about food price, and she said, "Why should I pay $9 for a pork chop across the street when I could get one for $6 here? I'm not paying for the curtains." Yes,
Yes, you are.
Yeah, you are.
You
Yeah,
are
you
paying
are.
for the curtains and the carpets and keeping the carpets clean and the dishwasher and the laundry soap and that glass that the drunk dude just broke and to-go boxes and every other thing and person in that building that needs to get paid from that $6 pork chop. And that's also why you can make a plate of pasta cheaper at home, because you're not paying anyone to come back and clean up after you. But all right, let's back to the math stuff. The standard food cost tends to run 28 to 35%. Without there are too many numbers here, but
Yeah.
you can have a couple very popular lower percentage cost items that will balance out maybe, that higher percentage cost thing that you are either reluctant to remove or raise the price on. But if you are finding that your food cost is way too high, and now I guess I'm talking to the sous chefs and the chefs out there, look at your P&Ls, look at what's selling, and look at what your costs are, and try to do the connections of, this is what's weighing my menu down. These are the things that really kind of move quickly or give a better percentage. Behind the bar, sometimes figuring out that cost is a little bit more straightforward because the bottles do come labeled with regular amounts. And as you said in the last segment, measuring liquids is pretty simple. And if the recipe calls for 1 ounce of this and half an ounce of this and 3 ounces of mixer, that's really pretty basic math.
The last place I worked that was very, very serious about their drink cost was I got to create drinks there for a specific shift where we would teach people how to make different craft cocktails. My cost could not exceed $1.65.
Dang.
And that was all the ingredients.
Sure.
Now, that being said, on our menu, we had, drinks that were very, very cost effective.
Mhm.
That's the great thing about an old fashioned. You're basically upcharging bourbon. It's a great cocktail, but you're getting a double, which a lot of people still don't realize, which entirely crushes me. Like, can I get a double martini? And I'm like, they're always doubles.
Yeah, right.
But doing the other stuff, that half ounce of lime juice sometimes costs more than the alcohol. One of the big things in drink cost back historically were Red Bull vodkas, where the Red Bull actually cost more than the alcohol you're putting it in, until someone decided to step like, oh, give me a Grey Goose Red Bull. And you're just like, okay, it's going to be like $19, but yeah, enjoy that. And that was like, back in like 1998 or 2003, whatever. But yeah, it's really straightforward in doing drink cost.
Right.
The math is super simple.
Yeah.
There's
Prices
like,
of the bottles don't change as often as like the prices of your bananas or your fish.
Which fluctuate week to week sometimes.
And liquor reps will do the whole, hey, if you buy a case of Jack Daniels, we'll give you a case of Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
Now, you've got two choices there as your bar manager. We're going to make a lot more on these if we just stick with the regular drinks we're doing right now, or we can add drinks or drink specials and make more money in a short term. You were given a free hand. It's like, hey, here's 12 bottles of free liquor. You should use all of those as soon as possible. You shouldn't stack them up for years to come.
I will actually touch on some of my bar management experience back when I was in New York, the busy brunch restaurant that I worked at. Those mimosas were my heroes, because this was 2008, 2009. And even then, I think we were getting $11 for a mimosa.
Yeah.
3 of them buys my case of champagne.
Yep.
I believe 6 more of them buys the sufficient orange juice to then cover that case of champagne, and the rest of it was actually profit. And that is a beautiful thing to me. But also,
that's why restaurants love brunch.
That informs actually how I make a mimosa, because I've seen some people who basically go almost 50-50 OJ to champagne. No. It is a glass of champagne with a little swipe of orange juice over there to give it a little color and flavor.
Do you know what really helps at the end? Splash of orange crush.
Ooh.
I kid you not. Make your regular mimosa and then just put in a little bit of orange crush, and it's going to be crisper, and it's going to have a little bit of sugar. It's like the rug in The Big Lebowski. It just ties the whole drink together.
But on that same
Good rug
brunch drink menu, we also put a pear mimosa. So we had the pear nectar and then finished it with a little pear vodka, and that was quite popular. Though again, the profit margin wasn't quite as good. And then a peach blini, which was fantastic. Looked great, tasted great. If you've never tried one, go find yourself a bartender who can make one.
Finding the peach syrup is the hard part.
Sure. While it might be straightforward enough to figure out that cost in the bar recipe, it can be annoying as hell in the kitchen. So, for example, that Italian sandwich with pesto aioli. How much aioli goes on it? How much do you as a chef put on it? How much do your cooks put on it when you're on expo versus how much they put on when it's your day off and they just come back really high from a smoke break? And even with that pesto aioli, knowing how much goes on each salad or sandwich is only part of the battle, because you also need to figure out what the batch costs, how many servings you get per batch. You have to factor that some sous chefs are very strict about getting the spatula and getting in every corner of that cambro, and some will just leave a cup of your very expensive Cambozola shallot vinaigrette on the inside of the container when it hits the dish pit. And I don't have any good straightforward advice for how to handle that math, because it's actually complicated and annoying, and I don't want to totally get bogged down in this. But I have one little rant that might actually make your menu costing a little bit easier and make your recipes a little easier to follow, especially if there are a bunch of different people that need to follow them, and that is using metric. All right.
Oh, yes. You trying to open up that can of worms, Josh.
Yeah. All right. And I'm sorry if we just lost viewers on this, but say your base recipe calls for 1/3 cup of melted butter and 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. It's going to be a busy weekend and you need to make a 5 times batch. Did you already come up with 1 2/3 cup of butter, or did you have to think about it? What the hell even is 5 times 1.5 teaspoons? All right. 7.5 teaspoons, which is also 2.5 tablespoons. If that's easier. Is that easier? Some cooks will avoid the math altogether by just measuring out 5 teaspoons, then 5 half teaspoons, if that's easier. Or we could try 80 milliliters of butter, 7 milliliters of vanilla. 5 times is 435. Half a batch is 40 and 3.5. Life is better. I'm not asking you to adopt kilometers, but just if you're making a written recipe that needs to be batched up or down, using metric makes it less likely to get messed up. And okay, end of rant. I will step off my soapbox here. But
I'm just gonna piggyback on that. Like, weigh it, put it on a scale. If you don't want to use metric, use imperial. And weighing out, what is it, 7.5 tablespoons of vanilla. You can, if you're weighing a packed cup of flour versus weighing a loose cup of flour, you end up with different amounts of flour in your recipe.
That was the exact point I was about to get to all you home bakers. Kitchen scales are inexpensive, and they are far more accurate if you're making a cake, you're making bread, you're making cookies, whatever it is. You're going to get a more exact result if you weigh your dry ingredients and measure your wet. It just, I mean, sure, you can weigh your water with water, 1 milliliter is 1 milligram, whatever, do the math yourself. Yeah, math, it's tough. No one wants to do it. One of the most annoying parts, other than the scheduling, one of the most annoying parts of the chef jobs that I have had is actually trying to nail down from the menu end what my costs are. It's easy enough if you take your invoices and you know how much you have spent, but that's not the ideal way of actually budgeting your food cost for your kitchen.
On the bar side, we've got these computers. And if you do your due diligence and put in every single drink and put in every single draft beer, you can call up a report at any given time and see how many of those you sold during happy hour, how many of those you sold during this time. I mean, you can get all those numbers right there in a nice, easy to read sheet that tells you exactly what you're selling, so you can see what's moving and what's not moving.
Well,
I'm currently in a situation where that is not being used at all.
Oh, that's a frustrating situation.
I can tell which drinks have been made on my days off by where my other bartenders, who I will strangle for this, keep putting speed pourers on top of bottles on display. Yeah, I come in and I'm like, oh, good, we sold a lot of this gin because there's a speed pourer on it on display.
You pull the speed pour one down to your well, and then you put a new bottle up. I don't know. I don't run your.
But like I said, I mean, also they don't use the alcohols I told you about that I requested. They actually put those in a cabinet for the 2 days or 3 days I'm not there, and I come back and have to pull them back out. I mean, it's obvious that we're making different drinks and doing different things. It just is, and I don't think there's a consistency there enough that we need. Even though it's a hotel, you'll need to be consistent for 2 or 3 days. You know, it doesn't have you don't have someone coming in every single day having the same drink and having the same food. But still, if you want to get those numbers right for your menu and actually be profitable, you have to be on top of all that minutia that just grinds you into the ground. But that's your job.
Well, I did say that there's no easy solution to the math, and I am sure that down in the comments, people will say, hey, this app exists. Hey, this website where you can just put in your ingredient, the amount, and the cost, and it will, pump out whatever your cost per unit is. And sure, those exist. In fact, put them down in the comments below. Let's help each other out here if you know the really good one.
Oh, yeah.
But that's also contingent, like Trae alluded to, ingredient costs fluctuate from season to season, certainly, but sometimes in shorter windows than that. And so sometimes keeping on top of what those costs are is actually quite a bit of work.
Limes. Limes are wintertime. Even in San Diego, limes are sometimes they're $90 a case.
Avocados.
Yeah. Especially when the cartels took them over.
Yep.
Started drug dealing avocados. Yeah, there's things that just jump up in price, and all of a sudden your precious cost thing that you've worked so hard to get down is just out the window, and you've got to refigure what? Let's say avocados. Let's say you probably have to refigure 10 dishes plus.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean, limes for me, as soon as lime juice goes up, it's like, okay, we're now losing money on a margarita.
Right. Because
the lime juice costs more than the tequila. That changing in seasons, just changes in prices or changes in market. I mean, a lot of times out of the blue, you're like, why did this go up? I don't know. But that's what it costs now. You're like, okay, great. But like you said it as well, people don't understand how thin the margins really are in bars and restaurants.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, when you see the restaurant owner, they're not usually living on the French Riviera, drinking the finest of champagnes. They're usually in their bar that they own about 80 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They show up in their 96 Corolla, and well, all right, not all of them.
No.
Well, I think we're going to take
that's luxury.
Actually, the first car I thought of was the 89 Chevy Spectrum hatchback that tried to kill me when I was in college. But I assume that anyone that owns a restaurant does not own that 89 Chevy Spectrum hatchback at this point.
No, they live in it.
Sorry, guys. It would be a palace to us. Okay, we're going to take one more break here, and we're going to come back with just some menu odds and ends, little quirks and oddities for what you should avoid and what you should do when you are writing and even just printing a new menu. So stick right here. We'll be right back.